In this video, you're going to learn how to add a new element to our HTML via the DOM. And this is going to be important because as we saw in the arrays section, the data for our application is going to be an array of objects, where each object represents the individual item, whether it's an expense, a to-do, or a note. It's going to be our job, the JavaScript developers, to figure out how to render something new in the browser for each item. For example, we might want to render a new paragraph tag for each to-do and put a little checkbox to its left. For the note, we're probably going to want to render two things, the title and the body. Either way, we need to figure out how to add elements, so let's go ahead and kick this one off. What I'm going to do is close down the to-do application, and I'm going to switch over to the Notes app. I'm going to do that both in Visual Studio Code and over in the terminal. Let's shut down Live Server using Control-C, and then we'll use Live Server with the Notes app directory. And then all we need to do is give it a hard reload or let it open up automatically. Now that we have the correct application up, let's just say that our goal is to add another paragraph to the mix. So we have our H1, our H2, and two paragraphs. We're going to add one paragraph down at the bottom. How exactly do we get that done? Well, there are actually three steps. So right here, I'll leave a little comment, add a new element. The first thing we have to do is create this new element, whether it's an H1, a P tag, or anything else. Then we have to update its content. So in this example, give it some sort of text value. And then lastly, we have to put it somewhere. So we pick the place to put it and we insert that paragraph. So that's a three-step process. And for us, it's going to require about 3 lines of code. Let's go ahead and kick this one off by creating that paragraph. The first thing we need to do is use document dot, and the method we're looking for here is create element. Create element, as it suggests, is going to allow us to create a new element. It's not actually going to put it anywhere in the visible HTML. It's just going to give us a reference to a new element that we can modify and then eventually put somewhere. So we call create element as a function. It is indeed a method, and we pass to it the kind of element we're trying to create. So I could create an H1, or in this case, I could create a paragraph. Now, something does come back from this. It is the DOM representation of this paragraph. So all we have to do is store it in some sort of variable. Const. I'll call this one new paragraph, and I'll set it equal to whatever comes back from create element. So that is step 1. We have to create this new element. Step 2 is to actually give it some meaningful content. You don't have to, but it doesn't really make sense to add a new element unless you're going to actually show something to the user. In this case, like we did up above, we'll be using text content to update the text content. So that is new paragraph dot text content. And remember, this is a value we can either read or write. We can read it, which would in this case be nothing, or we could write it, allowing us to set a new text value. I'm going to say this is a new element from JavaScript. Excellent. So that is steps 1 and 2. We have our new paragraph. We have successfully given it some sort of meaningful content. The last thing to do is to pick a place to put it and then put it there. So what I'm going to do is use a method called append child. Let's go ahead and see how that works by first writing out the line, and then we'll explore how it changes our markup. That is going to be document dot, and the first thing we want to do is pick the place we're trying to put this paragraph. So in our case, I'm going to use the append child method, and we're going to use that on body. So append child adds the new thing as the last item inside of, in this case, body. So that would put it way at the bottom exactly where we want it. It would be inside of the body tag, but it would be at the bottom of the list, making it come after the other 4 pieces of text content we have. Over in the Notes app file, we can get that done. First, we have to select the body. So document dot query selector, which we've already used. I'm going to use query selector to select the body, and then we use the method append child. This is the method that we're commonly going to be using, that is capital C in child. Now, what do we pass to append child? We just pass in the thing we're trying to append. In this case, we have the new child right here under the new paragraph variable. I'm going to go ahead and add a reference to that. And there we go. We have steps 1, 2, and 3 all complete, and this is successfully allowing us to add a new paragraph via JavaScript. Let's go ahead and make sure it actually works. I'm going to save the Notes application, and what do we get? We get our new paragraph showing up down below. This is a new element from JavaScript. You'll notice this one hasn't been censored because it doesn't even get added until after the censoring code runs. That means that this code does not see this paragraph when it actually selects all of the paragraphs and manipulates the text content for each. So there we have it. It really does not take a whole lot to add a new element into the mix, and you can use this for whatever type of element you want, not just paragraphs. Now that we can add an element, we're going to be able to actually incorporate the real data structure that we'll be working with. That was the one we created over in Arrays. For the Notes application, we had an array of objects where we have title and body for each. We're going to save the user's notes in this structure, and when we ask the user for the information to create a new note, we're going to require 2 inputs, a title and a body. We have to have both of these pieces of information. For now, though, we can take this data, our starting structure, and copy it and paste it up at the top of the Notes application file. That's going to allow us to loop over each item in Notes and add something to the DOM for all. Now that we have this for the Notes application, let's go ahead and do the same thing for the To-Dos application. I'm going to close down all of these files and open up the To-Do app. Over inside of the todo.js file from the Arrays directory, we're going to take our old data structure, which is still correct. We need text and completed for each, and I am going to copy it to the very top of this file over here. Excellent. And now it's challenge time. It's going to be your job to add some new stuff to the markup based off of the data over here. Obviously, you're going to switch over to the To-Do app instead of the Notes application. Now, in the HTML for the To-Do app, we currently have our H1 and a bunch of paragraph tags. These paragraph tags don't come from real data. They're just static paragraphs typed right in here. So we're going to remove them. And instead of rendering static paragraphs, we're going to render dynamic ones based off of the array values above. I'm going to remove the code from the last challenge. There are no paragraphs in the document, so we're not going to be able to remove the ones with the in the text anymore. And what you're going to do is the following. The first thing I'd like you to do is print a little summary message letting them know how many to-dos they still need to complete. So we can say something like, you have 2 to-dos left, because I have not ordered the cat food and I have not done my work. I did clean the kitchen, buy food, and exercise. Those are all completed. So here you can just put this little message in a paragraph tag. Excellent. The next thing you're going to do is print a paragraph for each to-do above. Add a P for each to-do above, and you're going to use the text value of the object as the visible text for the paragraph. So in the end of the day, I should see my header, to-dos. I should see my message based off of this data. You have 2 to-dos left. Then I should see paragraphs that say order cat food, clean kitchen, buy food, do work, and exercise. You don't need to worry about putting them in order. You don't have to worry about incorporating the completed property value just yet. We'll get to all of that later. For now, all I want you to do is get all of that information in place, and you know how to do that. You saw those 3 lines, so take some time to pause the video, knock this one out, test your work by actually switching over to the To-Dos app and make sure everything comes up. Then you can come back here and click play. All right, how'd that one go? Hopefully you did not have too much trouble. The first thing that I'm going to do is figure out how many to-dos I have left. And I'm going to do that by using the array filter method. So right here, I could create a const for incomplete to-dos. I'll set this equal to to-dos.filter. Filter takes a function, as we saw in the last section, and we get access to the individual item, in this case, a to-do. Now, we return true if we should keep the item and false otherwise. So in this case, I'm going to use the to-do.completed value, but as we discussed, that's the opposite of what we want. We actually want to keep the ones where completed is false, because those are the ones that haven't been finished. So all we have to do is flip the Boolean using the logical not operator. Now we have a list of the incomplete to-dos, and we have access to its length property to print our message. So let's go ahead and do just that. Right here, const summary equals document dot create element. Now I did mention that you should put this in a paragraph tag, but I'm actually going to put it in an H2 so it shows up a bit bigger. You can go ahead and switch that over if you like. Otherwise, you can keep it the way you had it. Now I am going to be using summary dot text content to set the text content for my header, and I'm going to set it equal to my little message. In this case, I'll use a template string so I can inject the length inside. You have, then I'm going to insert the length, so $ curly braces in here. That would be incomplete to-dos dot length. Then after that, we just put to-dos left, and I won't add any punctuation onto the end. The last thing we have to do is make sure this actually shows up. We're going to have it come up next in the list right after the H1 so we can use the technique we explored before. That's document.query selector. We're looking for the body, so I'll pass that in as the string value. Then we use the append child method, which we know adds it on to the very end. And what are we trying to append? We're trying to append the summary we created above. So right here, summary, awesome. So this is going to get the summary showing up. And before we continue on, we can actually make sure this works. So I'm going to save the file. I'm going to switch over to the terminal, and we're just going to rerun live server under the to-do app directory, and this should pull up the application. And right here, I'm seeing to-dos. You have 2 to-dos left. So we're headed in the right direction. Now that we have our summary message printing, we want to move on and print a new paragraph for each item in the to-dos array. Now, I didn't explicitly tell you how to do this, but if we want to do something for each item in an array, what do we use? We use the for each method. So what you needed to do is use for each to loop over each item. And then you had to add these lines to create a new item, add the text value correctly, and then append it. Obviously using a paragraph instead of an H2 and the to-dos text value instead of our template string. Let's go ahead and kick this process off right here. That's going to be to-dos dot for each. We pass in a function. This function gets called with the individual to-do, and then we're going to set up those 3 lines. So I could say something like const p equals document dot create element. We're going to create a new paragraph for each one. Next up, we have to set the text content p.text content. In this case, I'm going to set the text content equal to the to-dos text property. That would be order cat food for the first to-do. Now that we have the text set correctly, we can move on to the final step, which is to put it in the right place. So document.query selector. We're grabbing the body, and we're going to add it on to the end of the body by using our append child method. What are we trying to append? We're trying to append that paragraph. So this is going to print our summary, loop over our to-dos, and print a new paragraph for each one. Let's go ahead and save the file and see what happens, and there we have it. We have to-dos. You have 2 to-dos left, and we have all 5 to-dos showing up as expected. And while this isn't the final version, we're going to put things in order and add filtering later, we are indeed headed in the right direction. And we now have a way to take our array data and get it all showing up to the user, which is a very important first step. Being able to manipulate the DOM, what we covered in the last few videos, is essential if we're going to respond to user interaction in a meaningful way. It's great to be able to console.log a message if someone were to click a button, but that's not particularly useful. We want to do more useful things, and now we're ready to actually move on to user interaction. So in the next video, we're going to figure out how we can do something in JavaScript when someone interacts with the browser. We're going to figure out how to, for example, do something when someone clicks a button. I'm super excited to get to all of that. Give yourself a pat on the back for knocking out this challenge. I will see you in the next video.